Today, a look at cannabis, the changing laws and growing businesses.
Then crypto. Is it time to invest or too late?
Plus, what's up with Trump and Section 230? Really?
I'm Alexis Scordato, and this is Future Forward.
I am Stephen Rosenbaum. Let us launch. Hey, Alexa.
Hey, Steve. Happy New Year.
Indeed. I think the first day I woke up and it was 2021, I don't mean to sound romantic, but I think the sky was a little brighter and the internet was a little bit lighter and less, I don't even know what, just gloomy, even though the world is still fucked and COVID is terrible. I'm starting this year off strangely optimistic.
That's good and refreshing. I don't know if I feel the same way. I think the analogy I would say is if you're running a marathon, like the New York City Marathon, and you're at mile 18 and you're just having a hard time.
Yeah, well,
the finish line is coming up, but there's still that last stretch just feels tough.
So that's why I thought we'd start with marijuana.
Okay.
Okay. We haven't done marijuana, which I thought would be interesting and fun, and it is a thing. I mean, there's a lot of new laws. So let's just we've got 3 sections in today's pod. Let's just jump right in. So I meant to make a list before we started. There's all kinds of like people you think of as kind of fundamentally conservative who are marijuana. They're on boards. I think former senators. There's all kinds of people that have geared up to get excited about the marijuana business. Does that just mean it becomes like cigarettes?
It might be more like alcohol.
More like alcohol. Okay. Explain.
So obviously everything in moderation, right? It's like doing too much of one thing is I think bad in any context. But I think that recreational drinking is acceptable. It's like $1 trillion industry. And
by the way, this is vodka.
Oh, nice start to 2021. That's why you're so positive, Steve.
That's right, exactly right.
Yeah, I just think it's again, it's something recreational at a party. If you want to leave out, bottles of wine, batch some cocktails, or recreational edibles, I think that's going to happen.
So, confession to make. First time I'm ever acknowledging this on the pod. So, listeners, just want you to be aware. I have only smoked pot one time in my life.
Wow.
And it made me really sleepy. And I was like, yeah. So, I literally, as I was putting together this section of the pod, I Googled marijuana distributors in New York. And of course they pop up all over the city, and it's not legal in New York, right? It's now legal in New Jersey. Is that right?
Yep. In November, that was passed.
So, but New York's pretty much gone, like whatever, it's a traffic ticket. We're not going to make a big issue out of it.
I don't know. I think once New Jersey starts making money, we're going to get FOMO and it's going to change.
Well, kind of like gambling, right? It's like the government goes, we need tax revenue. And here's the thing we don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So you think, so let's get in the time machine and go forward. You tell me how far before I go to my corner bodega and I can get, pot brownies next to my Twinkies.
Like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I'm going to say way sooner than that. In part just because the budget hole in New York is so, like, when you sit down around the table with the state, budget analysts and New York budget, and you say, okay, how much money are we going to be short? it's billions. It's the numbers out there. I'm just not going to Google it now, but it's billions and billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm just thinking because when I visited, say, Portland, like there are dispensaries there, but they're still very specialized. Like it's not like you go into your local bodega on the corner and get it. You're still seeking it out. So even markets that are
all right. So maybe I don't. So you're saying I jumped it. So you're saying before the bodega is the distillery or the
dispensary. I think
Right.
we'll have dispensaries like 2022.
Okay. I would, yeah. I mean, but again, I'm back to my New York State, New York City tax shortfall. At the end of the day, you can raise taxes, but the economy's bad, so that's a bad idea. You can hit up rich people, but they're already leaving town, so that's not a good idea. You can hit up, and they're going to do all of these things, and we can raise the tolls on the bridges and and ferries, but because I don't cross the water to get to New York, I don't know how people whenever I go upstate and then cross back through the bridge, I'm stunned. It's like $475 per crossing now. I mean, it's not, but it's expensive.
It's like 12, 15 bucks, I think.
No joke.
Yeah.
So I think, and New York, state already has casinos, but New York City has those racino things. I don't quite know what they are. But I think cannabis, but I also think I don't want to be, there's a whole series of things that happen. One is there's an enormous number of people in prison for low level, marijuana crimes that should never have gone to prison.
Yep.
And whose lives have been ruined. And the whole marijuana is a gateway drug to hard drugs thing. I don't know. I never saw that argued in a way that made me believe it was true.
Yeah, true. Well, in the article you pulled, I didn't realize that 111 million Americans live in a state where marijuana is legal. That's a third of the U.S. already.
So, and so just by way of example, so my younger son went to college in Colorado, and so he went to a state where marijuana was legal, but because the college gets federal money and the federal law says that marijuana is illegal, they had a strict no on campus and no campus housing marijuana rule, which seemed pretty, and they actually prosecuted kids for it and threw kids out of school for it.
Wow.
Yeah. So kids, if you're thinking about going to Colorado to go to college because you think you're going to get, to be able to smoke dope, turns out not so true.
True, but you just have to go off campus. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean, well, I have not asked my son this question about how prevalent it was, but I suppose I could. So would you invest in a cannabis business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the market demand is growing. I think the stigma around it is changing, and I think there's a lot of opportunity in the space.
I have a friend in San Francisco who, when I visited him, I don't know, 3 years ago, had a nascent couple of people working for him, edibles business. And I think he now has 300 employees and a big grow plant and as manufacturing. And I should remember the name of it, but I don't. But he at the time asked me if I was interested in investing, and I just, I mean, I had other things that I thought I was more capable of being discerning about. So what else do we need to know about cannabis in this new year?
So some new states like New Jersey have legalized marijuana. More people are smoking pot in the pandemic. Right? Like
it's the pot pandemic. See, now this is why you get the big bucks. Pot pandemic is a completely marketable phrase.
Yeah, they dispensaries were classified as an essential business. So where you could not get your nails done, you could not get a haircut, you could not dine indoors, you could go buy some edibles.
I'd love to have been in the room where that decision got made.
Well, because a lot of the states that passed it, right, it was through the lens of medical marijuana. And then that sort of dovetailed into commercial retail.
I never understood nail salons or tattoo parlors as essential businesses when they were trying to get, like, I think tattoo parlors opened up pretty quickly, and it would seem to me that would be the kind of thing you could wait on. Like,
yeah, I think the people who really advocate for it hard are like, they see it as like a hygiene thing.
You lost me there. You're saying that tattoo parlors are hygienic?
Well, it's like, oh, you're working with needles, and it's like, oh, my tattoo needs to like get freshened up, or I have an issue with my skin and my tattoo. I need to go see my tattoo person. I don't know. I think it's a stretch, but I can see how people who are really into their tattoos and really care about their cuticle beds push hard.
Listeners, I'm just going to say this. I don't have any tattoos. Alexa, you have none that I'm aware of.
I have no tattoos.
All right. So we are not experts in this field. This is,
and I'm not advocating for tattoos or nail salons.
For lots of you who've listened to us for a long time, there are things we're actually really good on. There's some tech stuff we're really smart on. There's sometimes you're going to listen to us and go, wow, these guys nailed that. That's really interesting. Tattoos would not be one of those things. So let's jump to chapter 2. Let's talk about crypto, shall we? So I have mixed feelings about where we are in crypto. 2.5 years ago, I was part of a group that was doing some conversations about Bitcoin, and somebody signed me up for Coinbase and said, put in $10, and I put in $10 just to be able to understand it. And
good for you.
And I forgot about it until about a week ago when I thought, I wonder if, and then, there's that whole thing about, do you still have your special key? And do you write it on a piece of paper and stick it on the back of your fridge? And I didn't. And but somehow I still had to log in. It sent me a, renew your password. And I did that. And about 3 seconds later, I was in Coinbase, which is now worth $270.
There you go.
So, not a math whiz. I went, wow, if that $10 had been 100 or 1,000 or say 10,000.
Yep.
Happy days.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, do I go into Coinbase with my account and move over, say, a couple grand today?
I don't think it could hurt. I think it still has a lot of room to grow. I'm not like one of those hardcore like crypto, Bitcoin, like I can't nerd out about it. I just can't. But like a lot of things, it's still really nascent. The fact that the average e-commerce transaction does not involve Bitcoin is just a clear demonstration of what could happen in the future.
So Facebook tried to create a currency, right? They did Libre or whatever it was. And that was a disastrous failure.
Yeah.
But what would happen here? Let's play future forward, as it were. What would happen if Amazon said, we're going to accept Bitcoin?
Oh, I mean, that's a game changer. I mean, it's from a go-to-market standpoint, that's the fastest, probably fastest way to mass consumer adoption.
So let's play the game. We're good at this. We're in the meeting, we're in Seattle on some virtual call, and Bezos says to his banking team or his currency team or whatever he calls it, what are the ups and downs of us looking at Bitcoin? Like what's in it for us?
I mean, one, I guess the people who have Bitcoin, you assume are in a privileged, wealthier class. So it's a premium transaction, but I think at a more practical level, it's going to be touted as a more secure way to shop online.
Interesting. By the way, we have a bunch of live listeners, so if you want to just jump in, ask a question in chat, either on YouTube or Facebook, we're happy to have you join the Bitcoin conversation. Particularly if you happen to be a proponent or an opponent of it and have something interesting to say, we'll just add your conversations right there. So the headline that we pulled from TechCrunch says the Biden administration can change the world with new crypto regulations. So change the world's a pretty big, kind of offering. And so that I'll just read a little bit of the article. It says the US government is failing with regards to fintech and blockchain regulation. Devoid of any regulatory framework in the past 4 years, we've been operating in limbo when it comes to development and advancement of crypto products. Well, we've been operating in limbo for the last 4 years on all kinds of things, but I wouldn't put the lack of Trump's interest in crypto at the top of the list, although he would actually have to own a computer, I think, not just a phone. That being said, what do you think? I mean, do you imagine that the Biden administration is going to do something?
Oh gosh. I mean, they have their hands full. I just don't really know how much. I mean, again, I think in general I'm in such a mode where I have no expectations, or my bar is just very low. And so I can't say they're going to make major moves in 2021, maybe in the back half of
All right, listeners, Alexa's bar is low. So we're going to have to ship her, I don't know, some cognac or whatever. You will have to stock your bar with something for the cold winter ahead. By the way, it is now snowing like crazy out my window. So you were right. It's going to snow. So I'm going to go out and say, I think Biden is going to push ahead to do innovation in a lot of places. I think, if he spends the first 100 days undoing Trump, he's playing by Trump's cards. So yes, he has to get us back into the climate, accord. And he has to do all this undoing to stop things that are just broken and terrible. But he also has to do some new things that are innovative. He has to fund green, energy in all kinds of ways. It was an interesting thing in the Times about these massive wind turbines I'd never heard about. But I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say that the Treasury is going to lean into crypto, and I've just convinced myself to put more money in my Bitcoin in my Bitcoin account. So Coinbase is what I'm in. All right.
Coinbase, they just filed to IPO. Disclosure, I mean, I put in like $1,000 in November and it's up like 25%, but so is a lot of other parts of the stock market, which is just weird.
So while we're not investment advisors, don't listen to this podcast and move your money around and then blame us when you lose it. Those of us who use Alexa as a tracking stock, I'm now going to just put my money. By the way, you could just be a tracking stock. That would be a good thing. By the way, for what it's worth, I talked to my very conservative investment advisor who manages my 401k and said, what about Bitcoin? And he said, we don't advise it. Too risky. Mm-hmm. So much like, going to to Vegas, don't put out on the table what you can't afford to lose. So, I mean, hopefully, Alexa, if $1,000 vanished in a puff of smoke and became $1.95, you'd still be able to pay rent.
Yep.
All right. So anything else on Bitcoin other than we're going to watch it and Steve is going to invest?
No, I mean, anyone who doesn't understand it, I think you just have to think about a technology that is hard, that, I don't know, when applied in different contexts, when you think about like fraud and privacy, it just opens a whole new world of potential.
But it also, I mean, not that we're going to get, beyond our depth here, but it also creates kind of a new, the question becomes, does your MasterCard and your Amex and your, your bank. I mean, does everybody get into it so quickly that effectively it's just another, the US government taxes it, everyone tracks it. Does it just become a currency? Is it just it seems like it's not going to be this dark art thing that it was for so long.
I don't know. I almost see it as like a utility, like a fintech utility.
Okay.
Like I don't care whether it's like Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever. I just think that the technology itself, in the way that I wouldn't know the difference of whether you are on 3G, 4G, 5G. Like if the infrastructure is getting better and it's safer, more secure, that's kind of like a net win for everyone.
Okay. I think we're going to count on people in the comments giving us a little bit of clarity on this, because I think we've now reached the dangerous end of our knowledge, except that Alexa was ahead of me. Not a shock. I'm going to follow her. I'm not telling you how much I'm putting in, but it will have a 1 somewhere in it.
And a 0, maybe.
Maybe a 0. All right. So
no.
So the last chapter, let's talk about Trump in Section 230. And before we do that, we should confess that Alexa said before we began the pod today that she was hoping that this would be a pod in which the name Trump did not come up.
Not even just this episode. I just, I thought as a New Year's resolution, like we didn't have to talk about Trump as a president anymore, but we still have 20 days left.
So they keep talking about Biden as the incoming president, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would like my journalist friends who are listening to consider changing the way they refer to Trump.
Instead outgoing president.
Outgoing president. That's a decision, right? I mean, that's a fact. There's no reason why, instead of saying President Trump, the Trump administration, all these words that they keep using when I don't think there is any administration left. They say the White House today. There is no one at the White House. So why not call him the outgoing president?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Now, I do have here's a little Easter egg for those of you listening. If you're really fed up and you're like, I'm not going to listen to this podcast anymore because they're going to talk about Trump, here's a thing for you. I found this. It is a Trump filter. You can install it in Chrome. I went on Snopes and checked, and they say that based on, they're not really a software company, so maybe it is not a scam. It doesn't appear to be, malware. I have not installed it yet. As I think I may have mentioned in the last podcast, I did stop following him on Twitter. And I'm looking, I've written an article, and I'm looking forward to the day that the Twitter, Jack Dorsey and company, that Trump comes out the day after the inauguration, says something horrible, is banned or is warned, and says something else horrible and is then banned from Twitter. That will be a great day. And I think that is going to happen. My prediction. So if you don't have the Trump filter installed,
they should have said, make the internet great again.
Make the internet great again. By the way, you're 2 for 2 today. Pandemic cannabis, pandemic pot, and make the internet great again. I could start that. I could literally start that hashtag today. All right. So let's talk about Section 230. So Trump has been in office for 4 years, which pains me to say. And he's been had his veto overridden one time. And it was him vetoing the military spending bill, which has been pushed through bipartisan for 60 years without objection. And he vetoed it because it didn't include 2 things. One, it allowed the renaming of certain military bases that were named based on, military leaders that have been found to be racist and, horrible characters, fine, whatever. And then because it didn't, I don't even know the right word, it didn't override or remove Section 230.
Yep. Which is just a bizarre thing for him to bring up.
I mean, the phrase batshit crazy comes to mind. But in addition to being batshit crazy, which it is, why does he care? This is an article from FEE.org. FEE is the Foundation for Economic Education. And here's a quote from the article. Quote, if you were in a coma for the past 12 months and you just came out of it and had to figure out what happened in the last year or so based closely on new bills in Congress, you would likely come to the conclusion that Section 230 was the world's greatest priority and the biggest, most pressing issue of the entire freaking universe.
I mean, one could argue that regulating big tech is vital to the prosperity and quality of life for Americans and the world at large. But yeah, in the context of military, I don't know.
I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, the whole attack TikTok, make it be sold thing kind of like crashed and burned in a big mess, right?
Yeah, it's like non-issue.
So Section 230, which you're going to hear a lot about in this next year, because this is a place where Joe Biden also wants to rework or remove Section 230, but for entirely different reasons. Trump, as best as I can explain it, Section 230 protects the internet companies by creating essentially fair use so that if Alexa goes and publishes something horrifically terrible about another person on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or Reddit or one of these places, you currently can't sue the platform. The platform says, we're just the platform. We didn't write it. We didn't approve it. Now, this has become increasingly untrue, among other things, because NetNet, they did review it, censor it, post it, say, review it for, all kinds of things. So that we had, we're just the software. It's essentially like saying, if I post a blog post that's objectionable and say something objectionable about Alexa, she can't sue SiteGround, the host, my blog host.
It would be like the driver for a team of robbers. It's like, I didn't rob the store. I just drove them. You're complicit.
But I don't understand, other than Trump not really knowing what Section 230 is. I mean, it would be so much fun to see him on live TV explain what Section 230 is.
It's a very, very bad thing, Steve.
I know.
Bigly bad.
It's bigly bad. It is bigly bad. But net, the military was funded, so fear not. Soldiers got their checks. Trump got a veto, which he seemed to want. And
he just likes conflict, confusion. I think anything to just rile people up. He's grasping at straws at this point, so I don't really pay a lot of attention to it. But
all right, so let's talk about. So we got two quick things as we wrap up. Let's just talk for a minute about Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Georgia election is on Tuesday,
right?
The Georgia election's on Tuesday. The Republicans are telling anyone who will listen that the last election in Georgia was a fraud and a fake, and that Georgia elections aren't safe, but go vote, which, I don't know how people react to that. Trump is going to be in Georgia on Monday to do a rally, hopefully jazzing people up to go to the polls, even though he doesn't seem to like the candidates very much.
Yeah.
And doesn't seem to actually
accept himself.
Yeah. And doesn't like Mitch McConnell very much. And isn't, I think the thing no one's willing to say out loud is Trump's actually not a Republican.
Right.
He's a Trumpian.
Yep.
And
yeah, I'm not feeling good about it just based on what I heard. Like exit polls, like people who came out for Biden in November aren't necessarily coming out for the two Democratic candidates, and that Republicans have out fundraised big time by like $300 million. And so the attack ads, it's just a little imbalanced.
Well, I'll say this. I wrote 2 checks. I won't one to Warnock and one to Ossoff. Credit card, not a check, obviously. On the day before New Year's Eve. I would encourage you to write a check if you haven't already. And anyone who's listening to the pod who lives in Georgia and is having trouble getting to the polls, you can just DM me and I will happily pay for an Uber.
Oh, so nice, Steve. If someone DMs you, let me know. I'll split it with you.
As you know, I can't imagine it being a better investment. I don't even know who you're going to vote for, to be honest, because I think getting to the polls is important. All right. So last thing, this is just a little bit of a footnote. Let's talk about this Amazon purchase. So this got, when you make the decision to announce a purchase kind of on the very last day of the end of the year in this news blackout, there's a reason for that. So Amazon acquired the podcast network Wondery.
Mm-hmm.
$300 million is the rumor.
Mm-hmm. I think they want to stay competitive. Spotify has double, triple down on podcast in their library, and I think if Amazon wants Prime Music and their library to be competitive, they need to invest in the content.
But not Audible, right?
It's so weird. I don't even think about Audible in this context. Like for some reason, I keep books separate from like music and video.
And yet, presumably, if they mush them together in some way, all of a sudden Amazon Music, if Amazon became Amazon Audio, and it had music and podcasts and books, then that I've been in and out of Audible a couple of times. It's a big subscription monthly for not enough usage for me.
But I think this is where Amazon as a media company, if they really wanted to productize cross vertical, right? Like they should find folks who have books and a podcast about the book, and then maybe do like a like TV series.
So I presume that Audible's deals with publishers are big, fat legal documents, and that publishers, though they don't really necessarily want to say it, have probably done reasonably well in growing their business. So I think that would be my guess is the deal would be fairly difficult to unwind.
Yeah, I would imagine anything in the IP and content space is just new, complicated, unprecedented.
If Amazon learned anything about pissing off publishers, it's like they have the ability to complain rather loudly. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Yeah. So Wondery is interesting. I'm a little puzzled. Here's the one last thing that I read it twice. So they call themselves a podcast network, but nobody listens to Wondery podcasts on Wondery. They listen to Wondery podcasts on, iTunes or, what Stitcher or what the Google Play. So really what it is a production company, right?
Yeah, I think for them, it's just a way to accelerate original content that is native to Amazon.
So as a multiple, I just want to say, as someone who's owned a production company twice in my life, the fact that a production company with no assets other than a couple of previously made podcasts got sold for $300 million is fucking awesome. Right? Okay. For them. I don't know anything about the owners of Wondery. I should probably look into it. All right. With that, we are out of time. Everyone, Happy New Year. I can promise you that Future Forward is going to be optimistic and uplifting and Trump-free it may not be 100% Trump free, but it is going to be. We're going to go in and use the Trump filter. It's in, by the way, it's in the show notes, the links, and give us feedback. We always want to hear from you guys.
See you next week.
See you next week.